Hey everybody, it's Jordan here. Welcome to What About the Game. What a year it has been. 2017 is practically finished, and Nintendo has probably had the best year it has had in a very, very long time. Like, it's less than a year since the Switch's release, but I mean, it's taken off. It's been amazing. They've practically had like a big first party release almost every month, plus some big third party titles in there too. Now, it's been so busy that I have not had time to cover them all. And, I've been busy with smaller eShop titles. I haven't had time to review the big games that I've really wanted to do. So for this video, and at the end of the year, I decided to do like a big, massive review roundup of all the games that I've really wanted to review, but have just not had the time. So there are quite a lot, let's be fair. And it's difficult to know where to start, but I'm going to start with some of the eShop only titles so far. Well, let's get on with it. One of the biggest small titles was Rocket League, the much anticipated arcade sports title that smashed together RC cars with football, and my word is it a glorious addictive combination. Rocket League on the Switch was my first time actually playing it. I didn't play it on PC or PS4 or anything since I'm pretty much a Nintendo only gamer these days. So even though it may be a visual downgrade and lack a certain something that other systems have offered, I honestly don't care. Sure, it's not the best looking game ever, but when the gameplay is this fun, who actually cares? The concept is simple. It's 3 cars versus 3 cars to get the giant ball into the back of the opposition's net. Your car can boost if you run over enough charge pads and even do a double jump and flips depending on the direction you press. I'm absolutely awful at this game, genuinely incompetent. Then again, I've only had the chance to sneak in a few matches here and there, but I love it. Some players though, well, they border on majestical with how they control their car and shots on goal. My jaw drops at how they can anticipate the ball's trajectory so well, boosting and jumping at the same time for what seems like minutes, and then delicately backflipping it into the net. And then there's me flopping around like a complete idiot who only manages to score if it's not actually my intention. There's not much else to say about Rocket League that's not already been said. It's a great competitive game with loads of options and you should all pick it up. In my opinion, Rocket League is an essential purchase. Next, we're going to go into one of my games of the year. If you watch my recent collaboration with Switchwatch over on their channel, then you'll already know that I love Stardew Valley. It's impossible to deny the wonderful charm and quality of this little farming simulator. I mean, let's face it, it's Harvest Moon perfected. You can tell it's come from a developer who's seen all the great points of the genre and exemplified them, who's seen all the annoyances of the genre and eliminated them. The game is a labour of love, and it's just so lovely to play. It's such a relaxing little game that you can pick up and play at any time. There's so much content here. You can play for tens of hours, or thousands if you want to, play as a boy or a girl, choose what kind of farm you want, as well as picking which girl or guy you want to chase. You can explore the mines, finding artifacts or building materials, take care of your crops, or even just while away your days fishing. I love how free and easy this game is. Personally, I'm only in my second year and I've played for well over 30 hours, but I still feel I've barely scratched the surface. It's an absolutely essential purchase that you can just about lose your life to. I know that I almost did at one point. Now we're going to go to a game that people have been desperately clamoring for maybe a decade or more. A 2D classic style Sonic game, and that game is Sonic Mania. Released to much fanfare in late summer, this was the Sonic fans' wet dream. It was like being transported back 20 years, back to the same great gameplay and same great kind of level design that fans craved. Now, I did kind of like it. In fact, I loved it for the sheer fact of it giving fans what they wanted all these years. In that regard, it will always be fantastic. But if you know me, you'll know that I've never been the greatest fan of the Blue Blur's escapades, either in 2D or 3D. I mean, they're fine, but I've never been blown away playing them. I think the gameplay is a little all over the place for me. Fast, slow, running straight into traps. I mean, I get it, I really do, but the gameplay isn't exactly for me. I'm just happy that Sonic fans got something special though. Can you imagine if the only Sonic game to come out this year was Sonic Forces? I think suicide rates may have spiked. It's a wonderful looking game retaining the old look while using more advanced techniques not previously possible. I adore the backgrounds especially. One of the main problems I have with it though is that there are just too many boss battles. Every act has a boss battle of sorts, and even though some are fun and creative, they get a bit much after a while, just too frequent. The music is just sublime. The remixes and original pieces are fantastic and bring new life to the series. probably elevating it above the soundtracks that came before it in my humble, uninformed opinion. I may not be the biggest Sonic fan, but it's still a decent game that I can probably recommend to most people. Now let's get on to some physical releases, starting with third-party games and with a launch title, Super Bomberman R. I was going to review it at the time, but there was one little snag. I barely played it. In fact, I still barely played it. I had Zelda and I had Bomberman. Seriously, which one am I going to devote time to? By the time I was done with Zelda, other new shiny releases had been released and I'd gotten into the groove of reviewing eShop games. I only played to the third world or so in single player, had only played a handful of local multiplayer games, as well as a few online matches with awful connection issues. It's a game that was definitely not worth the price that I paid for it at the time. Thing is, it's Bomberman, and the general gameplay is the same as it's always been. For me, the few local multiplayer games that I played were actually really fun. The single player was just really very forgettable, and at the time it was stupidly difficult. Since release, the game has been surprisingly supported by Konami, yes, don't faint, with improved visuals, performance, tweaks, as well as free DLC. It's a game that's really developed into something a bit more acceptable. I honestly don't plan on playing through the single player ever again, but I know that if I need a solid multiplayer game when friends are around, this will be in the list along with plenty of other games available for the Nintendo Switch. Maybe it's still a tad on the expensive price, but if you can find it cheaper, then I think you should pick it up, specifically for local multiplayer games. In all honesty, Super Bomberman R gets a maybe from me. Now let's move on to a game that I feel has been fairly misunderstood by critics, Has Been Heroes. I can see why reviewers at the time had a lot of criticism for this early Switch game. It's difficult, absolutely brutal. I wouldn't be surprised to have learned that most reviewers didn't pass the first world as it was. Has Been Heroes does not pull any punches. Indeed, I was personally put off by playing this game because of what I'd heard originally. It wasn't until I saw a conversation on a forum that I frequent, where some people were thoroughly enjoying the game and offered tons of advice, that I took the plunge. My initial thoughts? This is impossible. But I stuck with it, I found more advice, got used to the very capable dynamic battle system that actually struck a chord with me. I was crap, but I was getting there. The battle system really is a star of the show. You choose 3 different fighters who you need to lead 2 princesses to school. Enemies move towards you on a 3-plane system. Your fighters are on a timer as to when they can attack. When choosing your character, you can actually switch lanes with other fighters if you think they would be more useful attacking a different enemy to the one that they're facing. You'll be doing this constantly as enemies have their own specific defense levels that, in order to do the maximum amount of damage, need to hit them specifically, take their defense down to 0. Hit it over, and you'll only do a little bit of damage. It's a strategy game that requires a lot of thought and planning. It's both real-time and turn-based, since you can pause the action at any time to ponder what you should do next. Personally, once I'd gotten used to the constant switching of teammates, I found having a nice flow in battle to be very gratifying. The game doesn't look like much, in fact it's been criticised for being like a flash game, which I can kind of see, but look past the visuals since, if you know me, gameplay is king. This is a game that really needs to be researched and given time for people to really appreciate it. Now, I wouldn't be crazy enough to say it's perfect or anything. The complete lack of guidance and difficulty curve that's more like a vertical cliff are something to criticise, but if you give it time, you can find what's actually a pretty good game inside. Not for the faint-hearted, but one that should be given a second chance. It's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but I would still give Has Been Heroes a recommendation if you have the time. While initially a download-only title, Wonder Boy The Dragon's Trap did eventually see a physical release. This is my Hong Kong version, which plays perfectly in English. I did plan to review it back in the day, and I was told a review code would be heading my way. Unfortunately, due to high demand, I was understandably told I would have to miss out. That wasn't going to stop me playing this excellent little game though. If you're unaware, this game is a complete remake of the original Master System game Wonder Boy 3. The developers loved that game so much they pitched the idea of giving it a full makeover to Sega. With their approval, they set to work on reverse engineering the original game's code. The end result is a spectacular effort. This is exactly how classic games should be remade. Very reminiscent of how the Monkey Island games were lovingly brought to modern systems, Wonder Boy allows you to switch on the fly between the original 8-bit art style and the new absolutely gorgeous hand-drawn HD art design. While it's nice being able to play the game the way it was originally, I can't not play it in the new updated look. It's just one of the best looking games to grace the Nintendo Switch so far. Wonder Boy is an action platforming title that stays true to the original. You are a cursed boy turned into a lizard man. You fight your way against other dragons in order to lift the curse. It's very Mega Man-like in fashion. Defeating a dragon will grant you a new transformation, which gives you new abilities and the chance to explore new areas previously inaccessible. Kind of like the Shantae games these days. Along with the rejuvenated graphics, you also have a fully orchestrated soundtrack which sounds fantastic, much better than the beeps and bloops of the original. Yes, the gameplay here can show its age a little here and there with the basicness that you'd see at the time, but it's still a very solid adventure, and one that you should own in at least some fashion. It's not the longest game in the world, clocking in around 5 hours or so, but it's an experience worth having, even if you're not nostalgic about the original game. I never played it back in the day, and I still really enjoyed this remake. It's an easy recommendation from me. LA Noire was a very interesting game for the time. Released over 5 years ago back on the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, it was an ambitious title for sure. It tried to mix an open world GTA game with detective work. It's back with a re-release here on the Nintendo Switch and was remastered for the PS4 and Xbox One. The gameplay revolves around finding clues at crime scenes, interrogating people, and obviously finding the culprit. It's a little predictable after a while, but I enjoy it. There's an open world drive around, apparently a full reconstruction of LA back in the day. There's a lot of effort gone into this, but in all honesty, it's the most superfluous part of the game, and it's basically just window dressing. Aside from driving between crime scenes and the station, there's not really anything of interest. I actually really like LA Noire. I love the era, and I love the presentation gone into it. Now, I've not kept up with AAA releases on more powerful consoles, but the facial animation here is scarily real, and the acting is second to none in video games in my opinion. It's the best voice acted and physically acted game that I've ever played. In all honesty, it would make for a banging TV show. It's not perfect though, in fact it's highly flawed, especially in the interrogation parts where you're supposed to go on the facial expressions of the interviewees as to which interrogation method you should go for. It can seem a little too random, inconsistent at times, which considering it's a huge part of the game, is a huge flaw. At times you'll be scratching your head at what the game wants you to do. I still really like LA Noire though, quite a lot. Nintendo wanted more mature games on their system, well they've got it here. LA Noire is no holds barred in that department. The themes it touches on and the visuals may make you feel uncomfortable, and it definitely earns its 18 mature rating more than any other game that I know. While many games have swearing and blood to earn their rating, LA Noire goes much further than that with the subjects that it tackles. If you're after something a little unique, maybe a rough diamond of sorts, something with a big budget behind it, then you can't go wrong with LA Noire. As much as I love this game and its style, its faults will put many people off, so in that regard, I give it a modest recommendation. Doom! Doom! It's Doom on the Nintendo Switch. Look guys, Doom is on the Switch. Originally released last year, this id revival became an instant classic and topped many people's Game of the Year list. It was such a surprise because up until release, everything was worryingly quiet regarding it. Many people assumed it would turn out poor or just mediocre. How wrong could they be? Doom is just awesome. It has such a frenetic action-packed gunplay, and all that it cares about is giving you an awesome time. The story is practically non-existent. In fact, the game goes out of its way to throw the story out of the window, as Doom Guy just doesn't care. It's just about blowing the crap out of Hellspawn, and I love it. What I especially enjoy about it is how the game rewards you for being aggressive. Charging in headfirst will gain you greater rewards. If you're low on health, holding back won't help. One of the best ways to get health and ammo is to make an enemy stumble enough near death, only to finish them off with a gory physical attack, a fatality as such. It's so gratifying. Now, as with most games on this list, I haven't spent nearly enough time as I would have liked with Doom, thanks to how busy I've been, but the couple of hours or so that I've played of it have been thrilling. I love how free-flowing the battles are, climbing, strafing, charging head on. Your character is speedy and nimble, very reminiscent of the original Doom. The fact that you're playing this on the Switch is a fantastic feat. Granted, I've never played the PS4 or Xbox One version since I only play Nintendo. This release is an absolute dream come true. Graphically and performance wise it's probably taken a bit of a hit, but it still looks great in my opinion. It shows the potential that may be under the hood for the Nintendo Switch. But who cares about all that faff when the gameplay is just so great. I've had so much fun playing Doom so far, and I can't wait to get stuck into it again. For those who have multiple gaming systems, maybe you want to go for one of the other versions due to price, as well as looking better, but for Switch owners only, this is a must-have. No question about it, you can play Doom on the train, and that alone makes it worth it. Doom is essential. Heading straight into another Bethesda's published title, Skyrim. Man, this game is bordering on ancient and it just won't seem to go away. But that's okay, because it's Skyrim, and it's awesome, a game that should be played by everyone. Released back on last generation systems in 2011, this Bethesda Studios title was a huge hit and sold tens of millions around the world. It was re-released on the PS4 and Xbox One last year, and now the time has come for the Nintendo Switch, this time with even more additions. So, it's Skyrim, on the go. Like Doom, it's just a magical experience for this to happen. I did play it on the 360 back in the day and I thoroughly enjoyed it, although I guess the adventure never really stuck with me. It came at a strange time in my life, my last year at university, and also came at the time of a breakup. I really enjoyed it, but I have no real emotional attachment to it like I do with Morrowind. I think the main problem with Skyrim is that even though it's a do anything, be anything you want to be kind of game, I just don't get that at all. It feels far more structured and less adventurous than before. In Morrowind, I felt my destiny was in my own hands, whereas Skyrim's destiny was already chosen for me. Now that I've got that little grievance out of my way, I just have to say that Skyrim is still a fantastic game. Yes, it's not aged the best, it's mechanically ropey at times, but it's still fantastic roaming around the snowy landscapes, taking on quests, talking to townsfolk and such. Looting dungeons is always addictive as it's always been. Honestly, call it nostalgia or whatever, but Skyrim doesn't come close to matching the wonder and amazement I had with Morrowind. But then, not many games do. That doesn't stop Skyrim being a great game though. If you haven't played it before, then it's definitely recommended. Even if you're never quite sure if the game's going to fall apart, you do get the feeling it's kind of held together by sellotape at times. Skyrim is an easy recommendation whether you played it before or not. Had it been a new release, probably an essential, but we've moved on a little over the years. Now we're going to head into the deep and wonderful waters of first-party titles. Now, as I said before, literally almost every month we've had a first-party title. And I didn't get them all, I got most of them, but I didn't get one to Switch, I didn't get ARMS, and I didn't get Pokemon Tournament, but the rest, they're all up there or here. So let's just get on with it. Starting with the port of a Wii U game, the most successful Wii U game, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. I think many people were slightly disappointed that this was the first major release since the system's launch. Not because the game was bad, but because many of the early Switch owners were hardcore Nintendo fans who were coming over from the Wii U anyways. This game wasn't for them though. This was for the newcomers who had missed out. It was a clever move, as I'm pretty sure this kickstarted people into picking the Switch up. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is an essential game if you're a Switch owner. It includes all of the DLC that was brought out originally, as well as adding the much requested rejigging of the battle mode, actually making it enjoyable this time. The racing mechanics of Mario Kart are just perfected. The personality is just off the roof, and the attention to detail is unprecedented. Mario Kart is just peerless. It stands above every other game that tries to be like it. Very few come close. Obviously, you could complain that the single player championship lacks a bit of meat, progression or variety when compared to something like Sonic Racing Transformed, but when the gameplay is so perfected like this, it's such a joy to play. I enjoy playing the single player myself, but it's the multiplayer where it is king. Just playing online with random people is, in my opinion, one of the most addictive gaming experiences I've ever had. The just one more race factor is in full force since you're never too long from the next match. I could seriously just play this non-stop online and never get bored. It helps that there's an unprecedented amount of very varied and unique tracks bursting with life. It's difficult to see what they can add to the formula now that actual mechanics are just about perfected. I personally am looking for an adventure mode or something akin to Diddy Kong Racing. What do you guys want to see next from Mario Kart? Either way, if you didn't own Mario Kart 8 on the Wii U, then this is an essential purchase on the Nintendo Switch. Splatoon 2 came in July, a month after ARMS. which I almost consider a sister title of sorts since they are both focused on online competitive battles, and both have gone for an unusual angle, something a bit different. Before I go into Splatoon 2, it's worth noting that I never did get arms. I played the test punch and I just didn't like it. It's just not for me, even though I could see other people would like it. But anyways, Splatoon 2. Following on a couple of years from the hugely successful Splatoon, well, at least relative for the Wii U, Splatoon 2 is a solid, if unspectacular sequel. Now I'm not saying it's not great or anything because it is genuinely fantastic, but it's a safe sequel, but it doesn't add too much to shake things up. Even though I loved the single player campaign for the first game, I must admit that I haven't even touched that in Splatoon 2. I delved headfirst into multiplayer, which is really where the game is at. At launch I put in about 20 hours in a week, and I loved every minute of it. Now obviously 20 hours isn't anywhere near what I would have liked, but you know, as things are, you get busy and you have to move on. I've only gone back a couple of times to play it since, but when I did play it, it was so difficult to actually put it down. Like Mario Kart, it has that just one more go gameplay that makes it so addictive. Rounds are only a few minutes long, and you're almost instantly into another game after you've finished the last one. It's fast paced and playable by just about anybody. I love the fact that it's territory based and not kill based. It makes it one of the more welcoming online multiplayer shooters around. Kids can understand it, grandpas can understand it, and you feel like you can always contribute in some way, even if you're not the most skilled of players. Now, there's a lot more to Splatoon 2 than Turf Wars. There are a few other competitive modes if you delve into ranked and league battles, but for me, Turf Wars is where it is at. So simple, so satisfying. In this sequel they added Salmon Run, which is kind of like a horde mode, although they only last 3 rounds. Very intense rounds though, it must be said. I enjoyed it for what it was, although more variety would have been nice. I look forward to playing Splatoon 2 more in the future, maybe over the holidays if I have time. It's a very solid and enjoyable game that every Switch owner should have in their collection. I don't think it's quite had the same impact the original had, which came as something of a tsunami of freshness, and people weren't quite as talkative about this release, so it's going to be interesting to see what Nintendo can do next to the franchise to stop it from stagnating. That's obviously one major drawback from practically perfecting it the first time around. If you're into any kind of online competitive game, Splatoon 2 is an essential title for the Nintendo Switch. Okay, hands up, who hated the Rabbids before this game and came out really warming up to them? While the entire world knew about Mario and Rabbids crossover before it was even ever been close to being announced, we had no idea what was in store for us. Who on earth thought to take one well and truly loved Nintendo franchise and one, well, somewhat tolerated Ubisoft franchise and slam them together in a turn-based strategy game with guns? Well, some bright spark at Ubisoft did, and thank God they did, because Mario and Rabbids was a turn up for the books. Something new and different. Maybe it wasn't what people wanted, but it's what people needed. So it's not technically a Nintendo game, what with it being developed and published by Ubisoft, but I'm throwing it in the Nintendo first party titles because I want to. It belongs here. The gameplay will probably be a little on the basic side for more experienced turn-based strategy gamers, but that doesn't mean it won't present a tough challenge. I really like the simplicity actually, especially when it comes to accuracy. There's no ridiculous calculation that tells you you've got a 39.27% chance of hitting them, it just keeps it simple. Either 0, 50 or 100%. No messing around, and I applaud it for that. The characters and attacks are full of personality, which is much needed considering there are so few of them. Mario and 2 other chosen characters, I always went for Luigi and Rabbid Peach, battle waves of demented rabbids in order to bring peace to the Mushroom Kingdom from the dastardly plans of Bowser Jr. With very challenging and unusual difficulty for a Mario game, this provided a great test of my cognitive skills, having to think far in advance, anticipating what the enemy would do, and also learning every facet of my character's abilities. They're all very unique, and it's painful only being able to take 3 in at a time. I do have a few complaints, mainly the impossibly rigid camera, which isn't actually that bad, but really grinds my gears because I keep forgetting it doesn't tilt up or down, despite me trying every 5 seconds. The overworld you walk through is wonderfully realised, and as you wander around between battles, you'll see loads of glorious sights, many of them quite humorous in their childlike way. There are puzzles you have to complete, but these seem oversimplified and not fully realised. I don't think it would have been a lesser game if they weren't present. They are small complaints of course, since Mario and Rabbids is actually quite an essential game for the Nintendo Switch. It's unique, vibrant, and easily one of the best Mario spin-off games ever made. I'm genuinely looking forward to a sequel of some sorts. Fire Emblem Warriors is a solid game. It's great if you like Musou games. It has the same supposedly mindless action that has graced all of Koei Tecmo's entries in the series. You mash the normal attack, then press the strong attack to create an over-the-top action, mowing down thousands of enemies. If you like Dynasty Warriors, then you will like Fire Emblem Warriors. It mixes characters from 4 of the entries together, plus some newcomers created specifically for this game. It does have some problems for me that stop it being quite the must-have game. Firstly, I feel the story isn't good enough. You may find it absurd, but I used to love Dynasty Warriors 3 and 4, in part because of the story. It was fascinating. Fire Emblem Warriors has the problem of trying to be a mashup though, and the amount of throwaway battles with misunderstandings causing people to fight, it just failed to capture my interest whatsoever. Another problem is that I found a fair amount of the battlegrounds to be dark and miserable. That's not to be entirely negative though, since the gameplay is still solid, and they implemented part of the Fire Emblem mechanics very well. It's more tactical as you send your units around the battlefield, pairing up, increase relationships, and of course the permadeath should you want it. It's a solid and entertaining game, not quite reaching the heights of Dynasty Warriors 3 or 4 that I adored back in the day, but I think that's mainly down to the narrative as previously discussed. It's probably on the lower end of quality when talking about Nintendo's releases this year, but that doesn't stop it being a good game. It's a solid recommendation from me. By the way, before I move on, am I the only one who misses the days when reaching 1000 kills was a genuine achievement? Nowadays the kill count is basically irrelevant. Now, how about we get to the Nintendo Switch's raison d'etre, Super Mario Odyssey. This game was painful. No, not because it's bad, but because I knew how fantastic it would be, and there it was in the mail on release day, yet I was so busy with everything in life and making eShop reviews that I just didn't have time to even start playing it until weeks later. When I finally popped it in my Switch, needless to say, it's magical. Taking Mario on a literal odyssey around the globe to many kingdoms in order to foil Bowser's plans once again. While of course the gameplay is fantastic as you'd expect from any 3D Mario game, what I truly adore about Mario Odyssey is just how much personality there is. It's by far the most likable in the series when it comes to that. Each kingdom you visit is full of life and character with its own very distinct theme. I haven't completed the game yet, but so far New Donk City is definitely the star of the show. It's just a great little playground for platforming fun. The mechanics are great as you'd expect. Mario's moveset is deceptively deep, especially now having Cappy to throw and jump off. Actually, maybe Cappy is actually the star of the show since he adds so much to the game. Not only as a weapon or platform, but giving you the chance to possess different creatures around the world. If I do have one major fault with Mario Odyssey, is that the power moves you get are just a tad too much on the common side. They're literally thrown at you at times, and I think it would have been a much more succinct, well-packaged game if they dropped around 100 or so. So yeah, I've only spent 5 or 6 hours in the wonderful world of Super Mario Odyssey, and I can't wait to devote more time to it. I've heard the best is yet to come. Honestly, if it wasn't for providing you guys with constant eShop reviews, I'd be in gaming nirvana right now. Super Mario Odyssey is essential. If you have a Switch and you don't own it, what are you doing with your life right now? With us almost being at the end of the year, we're going to almost end with Nintendo's last big release for 2017, one of my most anticipated titles as I love the series it's based on, and it's a dream come true that it's arrived so early in the Switch's life, Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Now, I'm not going to pretend I'm anywhere near close to being done with Xenoblade Chronicles 2, far from it. In fact, I've only played it for 3 hours, which is almost laughable. Monolith Soft's huge open world action RPG is just way too big for me to sink enough time in to since its December 1st release, and I've only recently got my hands on it. The eShop has just been far too busy recently, but what you do need to know is that I'm absolutely loving it so far, just as I loved the previous games in the series. If you watched my Xenoblade Chronicles X review way back when, then you'll know how much I hold this in high regard. There's been a lot of fuss over the character designs, of them being more anime style than realistic. I just don't see how that's a problem. The characters are more emotive, even more so than what they were before. I'm really enjoying the fact that the British accents are back for the most part, or at least there's a nice variety on show here. I can't really comment on the story since, like I said, it's barely even opened up, I'm very intrigued so far though, and I can't wait to unravel the juicy story meat it will no doubt offer. The combat is as wacky as it's ever been for the Xenoblade series, although I do enjoy it, but if I know the Xenoblade series like I think I do, then, like always, they start off simple, but continuously add more and more mechanics over the tens of hours that you'll be sinking into it, until you get something stupidly and wonderfully complicated. That may be off-putting for some. Musical director Yasunori Mitsuda is back from the original game to score this open world classic, and even though I did enjoy Xenoblade Chronicles X's eclectic soundtrack, many of you will love to know this is back to its best thanks to his return. There's not much else I can say right now because I barely even scratched the surface, and talking about it without the experience could possibly do it an injustice. Just gonna say that I'm very much looking forward to finding out what it's got to offer. It's far too early for me to state whether Xenoblade 2 is recommended or essential, but I do have high hopes for it. So this review roundup is almost over, but there is one more title that I have yet to cover, and probably my favourite title of 2017, and one of my favourite games of all time, The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. Never in the history of hype has a game built up so much excitement for me, while simultaneously exceeding expectation completely and giving me more fun and wonderment than I ever could have imagined. When it was announced as Link's first adventure in an open world, I was slightly worried about the lack of guidance or handcraftedness that often plagues the genre. I do enjoy a nice structure to my games, and while Breath of the Wild does lack that at times, it somehow made me adore this new style of Zelda and open my eyes to how fantastic an open world game can be. I love the sense of wonderment you get when you glide off the Great Plateau for the first time, and you can go in any direction that you want to. North, south, east, west. It's completely up to you how you want to save the kingdom. Tracking down the shrines, taking on the divine beasts, or just heading straight for Ganon. But let's face it, this game is going to absorb you and make you want to 100% complete it. Well, aside from collecting all 900 Korok seeds, of course. Another thing I was slightly wary about was the lack of items or tools that Link is so famous for collecting. No hook shots to find, no bomb chews or anything like that. Instead, you get all of your powers practically from the start. Here they're called runes, and you have the stasis, which stops time in certain items, cryonis, which brings out a block of ice on water, you have bombs, and then finally magnesis, which lets you grab metallic objects and carry them around. It's weird getting them right from the beginning and not being rewarded for doing dungeons, but actually it sets you out perfectly for your adventure. You have everything fully equipped to tackle the shrines and save Hyrule. It's a bold change for Zelda, as is just about everything in this game. Despite changing almost everything we know about the series, it somehow still retains the soul and feeling of playing Zelda. For me, it somehow gave me those magical feelings of playing Zelda for the very first time again, and in my opinion that is priceless. This game is just so clever. You'll be amazed at how many different ways you can achieve things, or do things you never thought would be even possible, just with the small handful of powers that you have. This is all thanks to the wonderful physics engine the game is built around. I love that you can literally climb anything and go anywhere you want, as long as your stamina and weather permits. You're not only unlimited in how high you want to go, but also how far you want to go down thanks to the glider. The adventure is limitless, and I think that's what sets Breath of the Wild apart from other games of the genre. The map is now yours to discover as you please. Icons are made, not checked off. It's going to be a few years before we see the true impact this game has had on the genre, but it's fair to guess that many publishers and developers will be taking note of why Breath of the Wild ascends it above what came before. It felt like we were waiting an eternity for Breath of the Wild, but the end result was something so fantastic and completely absorbing that even after 100 hours, I could easily put in 100 more. I could eulogize about Breath of the Wild all day long, but what's worrying is that it's not even perfect. There are so many little improvements that could be made to this new genre of Zelda that the thought of what could come next is mind-blowing. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is easily my favourite game of 2017, even up there with my favourite games of all time. Maybe even passing my love for A Link to the Past. Absolutely essential. I hope you've all enjoyed this big massive roundup of Switch games for 2017. It's been a long one, I apologise, but there's just so much to cover. And yeah, 2018 is looking very good so far. We've got Yoshi, Kirby, maybe Metroid, maybe Pokemon, who knows. It's going to be very, very exciting to find out what is in store next for us. As for me, it's been a good year for me. Past 1,000 subscribers finally. And, I want to say thank you to you guys. You've been amazing. Thank you for watching my videos and, just sticking with me all this time through my, my quick reviews and stuff like that. So I hope you guys have had a great 2017 and I hope you have an even better 2018. Take care, guys. See you later.